We'll have some people filtering in. It's as I said earlier, it's definitely kind of crunch time here, and I know a lot of representatives are working on other legislation during lunch breaks and at night. So we'll move through this. So thank you everybody for attending, and I thought we'd start off today's Older Vermonters Caucus by hearing from Monica White, our new commissioner at Dale. So welcome, Monica. Thank you for being here today. We're glad you're able to join us. So maybe you could introduce yourself and say a few words, and looking forward to working with you in the future. So thank you.
Sure. So thank you so much, Representative Noyes, for the invitation to join today and to speak with folks for just a bit. I recognize many of you, and some are new names that I'm looking forward to working with in this new capacity. So I'm the very new interim commissioner. This is day 3 on the job, so learning a lot and absorbing a lot pertaining to my new role. But I've been with Dale for almost 6 years now as director of operations. And over the course of the past year, I've been primarily redeployed to lead our COVID-19 response, which has been a huge impact to older Vermonters and Vermonters residing in long-term care facilities, and really, really grateful for the efficacy of the vaccine rollout as it pertains to that population, and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think we all have a sense of relief that that we might have the brunt of the pandemic kind of getting toward the rearview mirror angle. So that's really great. Prior to the pandemic, my role really entailed areas of policy development, communications, public relations. Prior to last year's redeployment, I was the legislative liaison for Dale, focusing on staff development and kind of sort of serving as a utility infielder within the commissioner's office for areas that required a lot of interagency and external coordination. So I'm well positioned to step in. I do have a lot to learn in terms of nuances relative to the commissioner's role, but I'm really excited to be working with Megan Tierney Ward, who's staying on as our deputy commissioner, Angela Smith-Jang is the director of our adult services division, and all of our other division directors to assure continued leadership and strength throughout Dale. So a little bit about me. I live in Plainfield. I grew up in Barre and Waterbury, and really was fortunate to grow up with my grandparents, all 4 of them as really strong influences on my life, and very fortunate that 3 of them still live within 30 minutes of where I live, and they're all wonderful people. And one of my grandparents, my grandfather, unfortunately, he died of Alzheimer's a couple of years ago, after residing in one of our skilled nursing facilities for a number of years. So I really have the personal perspective of a family member and our family kind of going through and navigating that situation. So really, on a personal level, integrating healthy aging into all walks of life in Vermont is really a passion of mine, and supporting Dale's mission to make Vermont the best state in which to grow old or to live with a disability with dignity, respect, and independence is something that is a personal passion of mine also. And so as we emerge from the pandemic, really having healthy aging being a main focus for us, and a lot of great work has been done with the passage of the Older Vermonters Act. And I really want to thank you all for your collective leadership on that front. There's still a great body of work ahead of us. And I'm really looking forward to working with you to continue the good work that's been started. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and looking forward to working with you as well. So I don't know if Anybody had any questions? But I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to have you join us in the future. So thank you.
We won't have to worry about rehearsing first names of our commissioner.
I know. Good point.
Right, right. The best part about all of this, we just have to change the last name on the letterhead. So,
All right. So today we'll get started. It's good to have Ben and Sarah and here to join us along with Jamie Renner. So thank you. I'll turn the floor over to you. We'll and have some discussion here. So thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I guess I can start by just introducing myself to. I am Ben Peter. I'm an assistant attorney general. I've served as an AG since 2017. And I have represented Dale as an AG since 2018. Prior to joining the AG's office, I worked as a deputy state attorney in Chittenden County for 5 years. But working for Dale has been a real pleasure and an honor, really. It's a great group of people, and very excited to work with the new commissioner. And thank you, Representative North, for inviting us today. Honestly, I don't know that in myself or Sarah or Angela had any real prepared remarks today, but we are very happy to be part of this discussion because the issue of self-neglect does come up in our jobs a lot, and it's an issue that's particularly difficult to manage. We do appreciate all of your efforts up till now, and we look forward to continuing to work with you guys in the future to figure out how to really deal with this this epidemic, I would call it. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for being here. We're definitely looking forward to addressing this. I know that in the Older Vermonters Act, we put together a study committee to look at this. I was just trying to pull it up to look at this issue. So it'll be interesting to see how that moves forward coming up here. So Sarah, would you have anything you'd like to add into joining us here today? Thank you.
Sure. I don't really have much to add to what Ben said, except I could just introduce myself.
Sure.
My name is Sarah Nussbaum. I'm a public guardian with the Office of Public Guardian. I sort of have three roles. I serve as the intake person, which means I have a lot of communication with a lot of different people in the state around folks who, a lot of older Vermonters who are living in difficult situations, concerning to neighbors, the case managers from Council on Aging, doctors, all sorts of individuals. And oftentimes they're reaching out to us because they're hoping that guardianship might be the key to helping people. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I also serve as a guardian for a small caseload of individuals, and I supervise a group of guardians sort of across the middle of the state. And I'm going to be participating on the self-neglect work group. So this is a topic that is of huge interest to me, and I'm very interested and happy to be here and participate in the conversation.
Great, thank you. Jamie, I saw you just unmuted yourself. Do you have something you'd like to add?
Oh, no, just thanks for inviting us to the discussion. And for those I haven't met, my name is Jamie Renner. I'm also an assistant attorney general at the Attorney General's office, and I chair our office's Elder Protection Initiative. And the point of that initiative is essentially to pull together attorneys and investigators from across our office to develop and implement priorities in terms of our office's engagement with supporting and protecting older Vermonters, and figuring out how can we as the Attorney General's office do that through not just enforcement actions and lawsuits, but also legislative advocacy and engaging with stakeholders and public education. And so we as sort of the Elder Protection Initiative have been grappling with self-neglect, as we all have, as a phenomenon in Vermont, particularly given the understanding that sort of looking at statistics that relate to elder abuse and neglect and self-neglect, it seems to be that of phenomena that result in negative health outcomes to older Vermonters, self-neglect, and this is nationally, as I understand it, eclipses all other forms of maltreatment against elders by others. And so we're really just interested in exploring the issue and what role our office can play in engaging with you all to address it. So thanks for having us. And I'll also be sitting on the self-neglect working group on our office's behalf, hopefully along with Ben.
Great. Yeah, I remember when you and I had a discussion about it way back when we were working on the Older Vermonters working group. You and I talked about kind of putting this together at one point. So I'm glad to see that it's going to be moving forward. It looks like that the report will be coming to the legislature next year in 2022. I just pulled up the bill to double check the date on that. So great. I see we have a question from Representative Toriano.
Yes, thanks, Dan. So, you know, I've been away from the Human Services Committee for this the second biennium, and I'm just wondering what we see here in Vermont designated as self-neglect. Can you or Sarah elaborate a little bit on that, as what we're seeing in our communities?
I guess I'm not sure I can totally answer that question, but I can say what I hear. Typically, I get calls from people who are working with older Vermonters who are usually living independently and are often bound and determined to remain independent, even when their living conditions may be really concerning. They may have medical issues, they may have mental health issues, which they may not be addressing. And it could be that they have never addressed them, but now that they've now that they've become a senior, they're really struggling, at least from the community perspective, to continue to live safely. They may have been able to live really roughly for most of their life, but then it becomes increasingly difficult and more dangerous as they are aging. And so often it's many different kinds of people who are trying to provide service to them, and they're actively refusing, closing doors on people, not answering phones, actively letting people know that they are not interested in what anybody has to offer them.
Do we see it coming as a result of the loss of a partner on occasion and mental health issues as a result of that, a long-term time?
Sometimes that's the case. You have somebody whose partner did all of whatever, sort of keeping life moving, and then the partner's gone, and it's overwhelming and depressing and all of those things, which cause somebody maybe to sort of spiral down. It's oftentimes, though, people who have been fiercely independent their entire lives. And so it's not just a situational thing. It's really, this is how I have lived and this is how I will live for the rest of my life kind of thing that you're up against.
Yeah, I mean, out knocking on doors and campaigns, you run into older Vermonters who, for instance, refuse to take advantage of food shelves or food stamps as a result of that independence that you mentioned. And it's very difficult to try and convince them otherwise. It's not a good situation. Thank you.
So just wanted to build on that really quick. Should, somebody call us up and say that they're concerned about a neighbor or a friend? What is the best way to try to get them some help, or who do we contact as legislators? If we do have someone reach out to us. I see Meg's hand up. Is that correct, Meg?
You got it. You can always call the helpline throughout the state. The area agencies on aging really have a lot of expertise in working with people, because oftentimes it's that balance from fiercely independent to loss of abilities as they age that creates that challenge. So some of the things that we see are, the people who used to heat by wood and they no longer can get that wood into their home, or they used to haul water and they're no longer able to do that. Those are just some examples, but certainly the helpline, we get calls regularly for people concerned about their neighbors, friends, family members, and occasionally from the people themselves.
Yeah, good advice. It's always the helpline. I've referred folks to that more than once. So, and then I noticed in the chat, Ruby put down, a concern around people being able to heat their homes. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Ruby.
I don't have much to elaborate on that, okay, other than that one of the main or one of the areas that we hear a lot about in terms of self-neglect is people living in homes without heat or hot water, and it could be, again, related to the inability to stack firewood or the inability to pay their heating bill or fill the oil. It can be related to a lot of different things, and I think just one of the sort of sideways avenues for starting to address that is by thinking about weatherization and LIHEAP, and how do those systems and programs come together to improve efficiency, which can potentially reduce the number of people and the amount of time that they have to live in an unheated, or that they end up living in an unheated home, sort of taking away the opportunity to self-neglect. If we can think about, there are pressure points where somebody is going to struggle more or less. And if we can reduce the number of pressure points, we can potentially reduce the number of people who are self-neglecting, and then focus our resources on those people who still are for other reasons.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have a question or a comment? I see Angela.
Oh.
Thank you, Angela.
Did you want to say something, Monica, before I went?
Sure. Although I just confess, I don't know if my computer is possessed by an angry little leprechaun today, but I can't seem to find the hands up button. So sorry for that. So
No worries. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention, so that it's on folks' radars, is that the American Rescue Plan Act, that the recent legislation that came down from the federal level, does include some funding opportunities pertaining to self-neglect as it pertains to adult protective services. And this is very new. We're still working to unravel what that means. And I think there might be some associated legislative changes that might need to happen relative to our statutory authority to include self-neglect as part of the body of work for our adult protective services, which right now is focused on abuse, neglect, and exploitation, specifically in statute. So no details at this point, all very new, hot off the presses, but just worth mentioning here. And I don't know, and I think that will be fully fleshed out through the self-neglect working group formation, which, as I understand it, is slated to convene next month. And that body of work kind of will roll in nicely there. And I don't know if Angela has any additional context perhaps to add to that.
Yeah, I would thank you, Monica. I would just add, from the perspective of adult services, we're really looking forward to the self-neglect working group because it's recognizing that this issue is just so complex and really fraught with complex questions around self-determination and self-neglect, and it's not an easy line to draw between the two. And there's so many, factors that go into someone's situation who may be self-neglecting or may be making a choice that they understand around the way they choose to live. So there's often, it's not just one thing that's creating the situation, but it could be a combination of financial insecurity, social isolation, and some mental health components as well, or disability, or homelessness, or loss of connection. So it's complex for sure. And so the working group will really be able to dig in deeper into some of the issues around prevalence in Vermont as we try to look at that. What interventions we have now, what are those gaps in our system where people are falling through the cracks potentially? And so what are some recommendations for improving our overall systems to support people with self-neglect? Right now, we have a system in which AAAs are designated to support those age 60 and over who may be self-neglecting, and they receive those referrals and they go out and really try to make those connections and support people. Often it takes months or years to be able to work with someone who might initially be refusing any support, but with time and building that trusting relationship, that can happen. But then for our population younger than 60, we don't have as designated a system for supporting folks. Certainly there's the designated agencies who can help some people, but not everyone fits within the program eligibility for their services. So there are gaps in our system, and we recognize that and know that we need to look towards some of those solutions. And I think with the COVID emergency, we'll also need to think about how the social isolation over the last year has potentially exacerbated some of the impacts of on people who may have been self-neglecting before or who have come into that during this time. We know with the COVID social isolation has led to increased depression, anxiety, increased negative health outcomes. So certainly I think self-neglect is part of that as well. It's an issue we've been grappling with for a long time in Vermont. Certainly, I think the first time it was called out in a Dale memo was 1996. But yet here we are 25 years later, still trying to figure out exactly how to work on this issue together. And, you know, as Monica White said, our APS statute does not address self-neglect currently. So there may be ways to modify that, but there also may be ways to improve our community system and our coordination across the community, across agencies, to really support people as well. So I did put into the chat at the beginning too, just a really basic handout for folks who might not be as familiar with this issue. There's kind of a definition of self-neglect in there, and then more about the role of the AAA and the role of the community. And I point that out too, because we're always trying to balance that core value we have for self-determination, for people to choose how they live and make decisions for themselves. We all want that for ourselves, and we're trying to balance that with a need for safety and protection for people at the same time. And that becomes really, you know, core. Both of those things become really core as we think about older Vermonters.
Thank you. And I just noticed in the chat, Tracy put that they have seen a 50% increase in the last 6 months. And so I think that kind of drives home a lot of the points that you made around what's been going on lately. And it seems like we were in a good place to put that in the Older Vermonters Act, to create that group, to have that in place here as we're coming out of as we're moving through this pandemic. So I appreciate all the comments there. Anybody else have any questions or comments they want to make around this topic? Okay. All right. So it seems like we've got some work coming up here, and I'm sure we'll report back. Probably be a good topic for next year. You know, to kind of, as the report starts to roll out, we can have an update, because seems like this is something that you know, we're going to be hearing a lot more about as we move forward. So great. Anybody have anything they want to bring up around older Vermonters they've been working on, or something we should be thinking about here in the legislature? I've seen some emails going around tax prep, so I just want to kind of put that out there. I guess that a lot of the tax prep programs have had some trouble getting going here during COVID. So, Chip, you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I guess I just wanted to briefly mention that last week our committee passed out the contractor registration bill. This impacts our older Vermonters. My experience in the criminal justice system saw that elderly and disabled Vermonters are the most often targeted by unscrupulous contractors. We are, this bill proposes a statewide registry of all contractors who take a job in excess of $2,500 in time and materials. It also requires them to be insured for that same job. At this point, OPR will handle a list of all the state contractors. It will be available on websites. We've heard from various organizations that they are prepared to get the word out, because some of our older citizens, older Vermonters, don't have access to computers. But I think that our area agencies on aging and various other contacts that our folks come into will be able to help out, so that at this point, you know, my comment was, if one 80-year-old widow is saved from $5,000 scam on a roof that didn't get fixed, this bill is worth it to me. That's really where it's at, and I'm hoping that it'll get through. I'm reporting it on the floor next week, and we're hoping that it'll get to the governor's desk and he'll sign it. It really is a consumer protection bill primarily. However, it does have an eye toward energy efficiency, weatherization, proper installation of insulation and vapor barriers to keep our homes healthier and safer for all of our citizens, including our older Vermonters. So I just wanted to put that in there. I think that this will really help. It won't provide compensation for those who have been taken off, but the idea is that it will help people not to get taken off by having a reliable list of contractors who have never had any complaints against them and can be voluntarily certified in energy on our energy standards. And so it just it occurs to me that, or it did occur to me throughout the discussion in our committee, that this was really a benefit to our older Vermonters as well as all of our citizens.
Great, thanks, Chip. And I know when you were on Human Services with, we passed some legislation to change how the financial exploitation of older Vermonters was handled. And actually, Jamie Renner was there and testified on our committee on that one. So, yeah, so this is probably
that earlier. Yep.
That was probably something that will work well with the work that you're doing. Ruby, I see your hand up.
Yeah, first, what's the bill number on that, Representative?
It's H157, 157.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
So the update that I was going to offer is around the hearing aid bill, H266, which we have heard from Representative Lippert that they will be prioritizing the bill in the second, excuse me. They will be prioritizing the bill in the second half of the session. There seems to be a lot of support and momentum on this, and I would strongly urge folks to read the bill, to think about it, reach out if you have any questions. I know it's complicated, but the upshot of the bill is that for every population that Vermont has the ability to regulate insurance, we are proposing that those populations all receive access to hearing aid coverage through their insurance. The nitty-gritty is more complicated, and I'm happy to walk through insurance details with you, but everyone should know that that's basically what we're asking. It's for Medicaid, large group state employees, teachers, retired state employees and teachers, and qualified health plan recipients, all to receive access. And I was talking with someone from the Rutland Herald the other day, because not to be too what's the word I'm looking for, idealistic, but this bill's a no-brainer. If we just think about it in terms of cost, which is not really how we should think about it, because it's an equity and access and disability issue of just living a quality of life that's appropriate. But if we think about it in terms of cost, emergency department visits reduced because we were preventing falls, and Alzheimer's diagnoses rates going down because we're preventing or delaying the onset of Alzheimer's. All of those pieces just save us huge amounts of money in comparison to the $3,000 for hearing aids. And excuse me, I've got a sad little boy.
No problem at all. And I know there's going to be some op-eds coming out on that. I was the editor of a local newspaper reached out to me from Stowe Reporter and Shelburne, the Vermont newspaper group. She was doing a write-up on it. So I think you'll see some press on that particular bill coming out in the next week here. So thanks for the update. So I saw in the chat someone reached out and asked for an update on H153. So this was a bill that we took up in the Human Services Committee that passed unanimously. It's currently in appropriations. I'm sure many of you know, it's the looks at the reimbursement rates for home and community-based providers. It went to appropriations because there is a study to look at how we set those rates, which would require some funding. So that's where it is right now. I'm sure that we'll be interested to see it on the floor. It came out of committee unanimously. I noticed we have a couple members of the Human Services Committee if they care to add anything, but it's looking forward to seeing this move forward. So Teresa's going to be reporting it, and it should be next week, I believe it's scheduled to be up. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I can try to answer them for you. Oh, Peter.
Yeah,
Anthony.
Thanks very much, Danny. You recall the last time there was an adjustment, and thank you, bless you all for doing it, last biennium. There was a piece of that bill which would have more or less given a sort of step increase over time, I think tied to the CPI, if I remember correctly. That got stripped out, unfortunately, either by approps or at the Senate. I think it was the Senate stripped it out. Is this proposal also going to put in some kind of guide path so that you don't have to keep coming back every 2 years and asking for another $5 a day kind of deal? Thanks.
Yeah, so basically what happened was in the Older Vermonters Act, we had some this legislation, and it was taken out as it went through the committee process and getting to the governor's desk. So Representative Wood and I asked that to be redrafted in a standalone bill that was taken up by our committee. We did add some to it in our committee to make sure that it was kind of touched upon more aspects of the agencies that provide services to older Vermonters, and then, yeah, so we're hoping to see that come out of appropriations and end up on the floor. So, yeah, hope that answers your question. It will basically looking at what those costs are and how we can make sure that there's a statutory inflator that gets applied moving forward, just like we have for nursing homes. All right. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add today? Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Next week, I think we're going to have our senior centers are going to be here talking about what's going on at the senior centers. So, and if somebody has a particular topic, please reach out to me. Be glad to try to put together an Older Vermonters Caucus around that particular topic. So thanks everyone for coming today. And then obviously this is on YouTube. You can pass it along the link. And then Brian, who's here, I want to thank him again for all his work on taking the minutes for this, and appreciate your help, Brian. And I try to send those out every week. So thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.